Hi guys, it's Spencer. Welcome to Sphynx Reads. Today we will be comparing the Mysterious Benedict Society, Disney Plus TV show, and the book. So I guess a little bit of background first. I had added the Mysterious Benedict Society, like the first book written by Trenton Lee Stewart, to my TBR because I was looking for some book recommendations one time after I had finished a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket / Daniel Handler. And this was the book that came up the most often. A lot of people describe this book or the series as very similar in overall feel to the Snicket books. So I had added it to my TBR. It wasn't like a priority. I wasn't super interested in it, but it was there. But when I heard about the Disney Plus TV show that was coming out, I think it came out earlier this year or last year. I think it was this year actually. I decided to watch it and I absolutely loved the show. So that said, I watched the show first and then afterwards I decided to listen to the audiobook. So I guess now I can kind of compare the book with the show. I'm gonna try to keep it spoiler free. However, since this is a comparison video and not a review, a lot of the things that I'll be talking about or referencing you won't be able to understand or get unless you've either already watched the show or have read the book. If you do want like a quick rundown of my thoughts in terms of like the show and the book, I would say that I loved the show, absolutely loved it. Some of the episodes were a little bit weaker, but in general I had such a fun time watching the show. In terms of the book, I found it to be a little slower, a little bit more dragging, although it's still good. I rated it 3 out of 5 stars. And if you're curious about the general premise of the story, it's a story about these group of kids. Most of them are orphans. They are one way or the other alone in some way, and they are gathered or recruited by this man named Mr. Benedict to investigate a certain institute or to kind of go on this mission to find out more about this phenomenon that is going on in the world called the emergency, which is kind of corrupting everyone's minds. And Mr. Benedict has reason to believe that the emergency is being caused by something or someone at the institute. So he sends off these 4 children to go investigate, and they are, since they are child prodigies or geniuses, or they're very skilled one way or the other, they kind of work together as a team and discover a lot of like really intriguing mysteries. So I guess now jumping into my comparison for the book and the show, I would say that in general, the show or the adaptation is very faithful to the book. There are a lot of key differences. I would say like the overall plot line, like significant or key plot points are very much the same. Like if I would describe the entire story as like this sort of line and they are connected by these different points, like the points, the important points are the same, although the lines in between those points, or I guess how we arrive at the next event, may be just a little bit different. I would say that some key differences include how the characters are developed, or even sometimes what the backstory of the character is a little bit tweaked in the adaptation. And also, while the main cast of characters that we have, like the 4 children that we follow, although their roles are basically the same, some of the other side characters are significantly different. I think probably the most noticeable one that either readers of the book or viewers of the show will notice is the role of a character named SQ. In the book, he's more kind of a negative character, I would say, and then in the movie, or not the movie, but the series, he's more of a positive character. Where in the book, he's an executive and he is almost like very similar to Jackson. In the adaptation, he's actually the adopted son of L.D. Curtin. So just that part is already a significant difference. Another character who is significantly different is Martina, where in the book, she is like SQ, an executive. In the adaptation, she actually plays a bigger role that's actually also positive, or at least a little bit more positive than her role in the book. So very similar to SQ, I would say, although there are a few differences here and there. When it comes to Jackson, I would say that he plays a bigger role in the book though, instead of the adaptation. Because in the adaptation, he and Jilson are always paired. They're basically never separated. And so I think that's a little bit of a difference in terms of like book versus show. Some people might disagree with this, but I personally thought that Constance was written out to be more annoying in the book as opposed to the adaptation. Even though in the adaptation she is pretty annoying, I didn't really find her to be that irritating as compared to the book where she was just really frustrating. In the adaptation, I can understand why the characters surrounding her would be really irritated and frustrated with her, but I personally thought that it's a kid and I just kind of understand why she is that way. Like I said earlier, in general, I feel like the characters are just much more developed in the show. Granted, I only have read the first book in the Mysterious Benedict Society book series, so maybe more development was going to happen in the later books. But in terms of like just the first book in the series and the first season of the show, I would say that the characters are much more fleshed out and developed in the show. Rainy's just kind of there in the book, although he is kind of the main character, whereas in the show, I feel like we got to explore more of his emotions, which I really loved because Rainy is my favorite character. Sticky, although he is, I would say, equally important in the book and in the show, I would say that Sticky has a more distinct and developed character arc in the show. When it comes to Kate, though, I feel like they're pretty much the same. Like, she's pretty much the same person in the book as well as in the show. Although I will say that I was not the biggest fan of the acting in the show. Although these are child actors, so I'm not like super critical of them. I was just here to have a fun time, and if they were doing their best, then kudos to them. So now I'm gonna get into like more specific things. First, I'm going to discuss things that I saw more of in the book, and then later on I'll discuss things I saw more of in the show. I guess one of the greatest pros in the book is that we get more details when it comes to the puzzles and the overall mystery that we are exploring in this story. I guess a significant one that is just kind of glossed over in the show but is more detailed and delved into in the book is the testing phase. We get to actually see the test questions and kind of explore how the main characters kind of answer those questions. I did like the way it was adapted though, because we didn't really need to spend that much time in the testing phase in the show, but in case you want to, I guess, see more of that process, then I would encourage you to go pick up the book. And it's not just for the testing either. The overall mystery, I feel like we got to see more explanations in the book. I mean, I think that's kind of a given when it comes to like book to screen adaptations. When you want more details and more explanation about certain things, it's almost always more explored in the book as opposed to the adaptation. Another thing I liked about the book that we didn't really get to see much of in the show is the significance of the helpers. We get to really understand how the helpers came to be, or came to, how they came to be, or how they entered the picture in the story, and kind of their role. Whereas in the show, it's very, very lightly touched on, and in my opinion, it was kind of a missed opportunity because the role of the helpers kind of amplifies the gravity of what LD Curtin was planning to do for the whole world. Like, I feel like if we had explored more of the helpers in the show, we would have, I guess, much more higher stakes. Jumping right into my thoughts on what the show did better than the book though, aside from what I already mentioned, which is like the character development, even without exploring the role of the helpers, or I guess their background or backstory, I would say that in the show, the stakes are still much more higher. I guess that's a little redundant, like more higher is redundant. The stakes are higher. I would also say the cinematography and the score is very commendable, because there are certain scenes that are pretty, like, I guess, insignificant, you would say. Like, for example, there's a brief character interaction wherein they make you feel more invested, or more, I guess, at the edge of your seat. And that just, like, really added to my enjoyment of the show, because there was never a dull moment. Yes, there were some weaker episodes where not much really happened. That's the thing that I feel like the creators of the show really did well. In those like sections or parts of the story where there's not much going on, they inserted these like key moments where they decide to change the music a little bit, or make you feel like something bad is going to happen and then it doesn't. So I really commend the show for doing that. Another thing that the show really did well, I would say, I think it had a much better climax, or the climax was executed really well in comparison to the book. The book, it was still cool, it was still interesting, but I feel like because there are higher stakes in the show, it made me really appreciate the climax more. And then finally, this is the part that I feel like is the most important. I think the main reason why the show was much more better than the book, I would even go far as to say it's twice as good as the book, is because in the book we only really get to see the story unfold from the perspective of the four kids or the four main characters that we follow, whereas in the show we also actually got to see the story not just from the perspective of the kids but also from the perspective of the team on the other side or on the main island. So we got to see Mr. Benedict and Milligan and number 2 and Rhonda kind of working together and discussing. Miss Paramore actually also plays a larger role. Their characters also have a lot of development and they also have their own individual arcs, which was really fascinating, and I actually am hoping that they explore more of their individual backstories in the future seasons. Hopefully it'll get renewed. Aside from that, we also get to see more from the perspective of LD Curtin and the scientists that he is working with. And because those perspectives have been added, the show never feels dull. Like, the story never feels dull or boring, because I feel like if we had only focused on adapting what's already in the book, which is what's going on from the kids' perspective or from their point of view, I think it would have been boring, but it was a really good choice that they delved more into the perspectives of these other characters who are just kind of in the background. These perspectives not only enriched the story so much, but it also added a lot of comedy. I absolutely loved number 2 and Rhonda's dynamic, their friendship. It was really interesting and they were really funny. Another thing that the show kind of did well, but also I really wanted to see more of, is they kind of introduced some themes in the story that are explored by some of the background characters. I don't want to give too much away, but these themes were just kind of introduced and we never really got to explore them, and I don't know, I wanted a little bit more, and I hope they don't just end that kind of discussion in season 1. I hope they delve more into it in future seasons. As of this recording, there still has not been word whether the second season is going to happen for the show. I hope it does. I actually don't know how well it's doing, numbers wise, but I really hope it does. I really hope that more people watch it. You should watch it if you are a fan of the book, have been a fan of the books for a while. Please go watch it. And even if you are not, if you want something that's kind of similar to a series of unfortunate events, go check this show out. It's a really fun time. It's only 8 episodes long, so it's not that much of an investment. Even though I was somewhat bored by the first book, I still enjoyed it enough to continue on with the next book, and obviously I would love to read the next book before the next season comes out. That is pretty much all of my thoughts on The Mysterious Benedict Society, the first book, as well as the first season of the show on Disney+. Let me know in the comments what you think of either the show or the book. Do you think you're going to watch the show, or do you think you're going to read the book, or do you think you're going to do both? Let me know in the comments, or what are you looking forward to in the next season if you've already seen the show. I would love to keep chatting with you guys, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and please forget to subscribe so that you can do it later, and have a good day.